Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for being on time and joining us tonight for an update on the City of Toronto's waste strategy and our programs. My name is Robin Shilett. I am a program manager with the City of Toronto's Public Consultation Unit, and I'll be facilitating and taking you guys through today's event. Yeah, we're good. Just so you know, tonight's event is being live streamed. It is being recorded, so that's just for your awareness. If you are participating in the Q&A, you will be part of the recording. I also want to welcome everyone who's joining us online through the City of Toronto's YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in. So June is Indigenous Peoples Month here in Toronto, and the City of Toronto encourages all residents to continue on their journey of respect and appreciation for Indigenous peoples by learning about Indigenous histories, attending Indigenous-led events, and supporting Indigenous peoples. It's always exciting to come together here at City Hall. And before you go home tonight, if you haven't done so already, I encourage you to check out the new Spirit Garden out in Nathan Phillips Square. It's a really beautiful space. The Spirit Garden incorporates diverse elements that represent First Nations, Inuit, and Métis cultures, such as a teaching lodge, an amphitheater, a Three Sisters seasonal garden, and a two-row wapen walkway. So tonight, we are using and participating in a land acknowledgement as a way to recognize the enduring presence and resilience of Indigenous peoples in this area for time immemorial. Land acknowledgements are also a reminder that we are all accountable to these relationships. The City of Toronto has been acknowledging traditional territory since March 2014, and the acknowledgement I will now read has evolved through conversations with Indigenous leaders. So with that said, we acknowledge the land we are meeting on today is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. So, in terms of today's agenda, we are going to dive right into the panel discussion shortly. You'll hear opening remarks from Charlotte Ueda, who is the Director of Policy Planning and Outreach for the City of Toronto, followed by Megan Davis, who is the Manager of Incubation and Design in the Environment, Climate and Forestry Division at the City. We'll also hear a presentation from Myron McClellan, the Senior Project Manager in Solid Waste Management Services on single-use and takeaway items. And then Michael Kant will be delivering two presentations, first providing an update on the long-term waste management strategy, and secondly on residual waste management. We'll have plenty of time for a Q&A. We'll be taking questions online as well as in the room. You'll be able to line up and ask questions at a microphone. And there's a QR code on screen now if you do want to submit any questions online as the presentations are going on. So finally, just our code of conduct. The City of Toronto is committed to conducting events and meetings in a safe and respectful environment for all participants. As a participant, you agree to treat everyone with courtesy, critique ideas, not individuals, and abide by the city's anti-harassment and discrimination, human rights, and hate activity policies. The following will not be tolerated and may result in being asked to leave: behavior that limits the participation of fellow attendees, coarse language, aggression, threats, and intimidation, harassment, discrimination, and hate activity, canvasses, campaigning, or solicitation, and violence of any kind. So with that said, I'm going to pass it to Charlotte Ueda, the Director of Policy Planning and Outreach at the City of Toronto, for some opening remarks.
Thanks, Robin. Good evening and welcome to everyone here in Council Chambers and to those who have joined us online. In 2016, Toronto City Council adopted the long-term waste management strategy that set us off on a path to achieve a circular economy and a plan for a zero waste future. Since its adoption, the waste strategy has guided the city in prioritizing policies and programs that promote reduction, reuse, repair, and better diversion of waste from landfill. And you will hear about two such initiatives tonight, which are the single-use and takeaway items reduction strategy and the circular economy roadmap. The 2016 waste strategy resulted in the creation of new programs and strengthening of existing waste reduction and diversion initiatives. But now it's time to review and update it to better reflect the current landscape and to meet the needs of a growing population. With Toronto's landfill reaching capacity by 2035, we need to continue to reduce our waste and look for ways to decrease the amount of organics and recyclables that still remain in the garbage. Toronto remains committed to prioritize reduction, reuse, and improve diversion of waste, but we need your help to get us to our zero waste goal. It's amazing to see a room full of individuals and people online that share interest to help to contribute towards updating the city's waste strategy. The project team and I look forward to hearing your ideas, your thoughts, and how we can reduce and divert more waste from landfill and continue our journey towards a zero waste and low carbon future together. And now I'll pass it back to Robin to carry us forward from here. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Charlotte. So our first presentation is going to be from Megan Davis. Megan is the manager of the Incubation, Design and Environment Unit for the, Incubation and Design for the Environment, Climate and Forestry Division here at the city. And Megan will be presenting on the City of Toronto Circular Economy Roadmap.
Thanks, Robin, and thank you everyone for joining us today. As Charlotte mentioned, the long-term waste management strategy created an exciting new strategic direction for the City of Toronto, which is working towards a circular economy. The circular economy is a society-wide approach to how we produce and consume that aims to minimize waste and maximize resources by recovering as much as possible from used products. It's a system where materials never become waste and where we're working to be better stewards of our precious and non-renewable natural resources. Adopting a circular economy goal in 2016 represented a fundamental shift in how the City of Toronto approaches the problem of waste. Because when you start to think about the reasons that waste happens, why a particular thing that you own has to be put in the garbage, can't be reused or repaired or even recycled into something new, when we start to ask those questions, we quickly realize that the solutions we're looking for don't just live in the waste sector. Circularity requires design solutions, designing our products, our infrastructure, even our cities, so that they are built for longevity, repair, and reuse. And circularity also requires behavior change. It invites big questions about how we understand our relationship to the things that we own, to the lands and the resources that we steward. What's our relationship to the earth, and what's our impact on it? How can we transform that relationship to be more regenerative? And how do we ensure lasting health and prosperity for future generations? When we start to ask those questions, we're really starting to get into circular economy thinking. The City of Toronto Circular Economy Program isn't a program just for the Waste Division. It's a goal for all City of Toronto divisions working together and working in partnership with residents and business, with industry, academics, environmental organizations, all parts of our society and economy. Since 2016, the city has been working to celebrate local circular success stories, explore how our own municipal operations can be more circular, and identify what longer-term projects and investments are necessary to make Toronto the first circular city in Ontario. I have a few examples of that work highlighted on this slide, things like turning waste into resources through our Green Bin program and our wastewater energy projects, but also looking at how we can create incentives as a city through how we purchase or through programs like our Circular Food Innovators Fund, where we're working to help businesses and designers adopt circular solutions. An important example of a project we're doing in parallel with this work on the waste strategy is to develop Toronto's first circular economy roadmap. So while the waste strategy team is working to establish new solutions for the waste that the City of Toronto manages, we're also working in partnership with 15 other city divisions to determine what we at the city as a whole can do to shift from a linear take, make, dispose economy to a more circular economy. One that doesn't just reduce waste, but also addresses climate change, saves money, sparks innovation, and creates jobs. So Toronto's 10-year circular economy roadmap is going to recommend new projects, programs, policies, and partnerships that the city can take in order to increase circularity within our own operations and within the community. And a big part of that is going to be working with the waste experts here to explore how new sustainable consumption strategies can be implemented that make it easier for residents to reduce their own waste, participate in diversion, and access reuse opportunities in their community. If you want to learn more about the Circular Economy Roadmap work, I invite you to visit the website at toronto.ca/circular economy and to keep an eye on that space as well for some upcoming engagement opportunities and conversations we're looking forward to having with residents like you. So with that, I will pass back to Robin. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Megan, for that update. And before we go to our next presentation, I'm just going to take care of some housekeeping I missed at the beginning. One is to make sure to welcome Councillor Diane Sachs, who is joining us online. So welcome, Councillor, if you are tuning in from home. Also, just a few other housekeeping items. Your exits are here and here. If you can see where my hands are pointing, your washrooms are also through this exit, and there's an accessible washroom that way as well. And finally, for the folks that are tuning in online, there is a link to the Q&A on the city's webpage. That's toronto.ca/waste strategy. Okay. So I'm going to welcome our next speaker. It is Myron McClelland, who is a senior project manager in the solid waste division. And Myron's going to deliver a presentation on the single-use and takeaway items reduction strategy.
Thanks, Robin. As Robin mentioned, my name is Myron McClelland. I'm a senior project manager with Solid Waste, and I will be speaking to the city's single-use and takeaway items reduction strategy. So the single-use and takeaway item, or SUTI, reduction strategy is a focus area that came out of the current iteration of the long-term waste management strategy. So what are single-use and takeaway items, or SUTI as we refer to them as? So SUTI are items that facilitate the consumption of food that are ordinarily used only once before being disposed. On the screen are some examples. So utensils, stir sticks, straws, and condiment cups are just a couple. So our work on the SUTI file began 7 years ago when Council directed Solid Waste to develop options to reduce the use of single-use items. The aim is to reduce the impact that Torontonians have on the natural environment, since SUTI creates litter, gets into our waterways, and takes up valuable landfill space. On the slide is a timeline that provides some milestones of our work. I will provide more detail on some of these items later in my presentation. Of note, the city has hosted 3 phases of consultations to gather feedback from businesses, the general public, and other interested and affected parties. So one of the key milestones of our work has been the implementation of the single-use takeaway items bylaw. The SUTI bylaw came into effect on March 1st, 2024, and it applies to retail business establishments. Retail business establishments refer to businesses where goods or services are offered for sale, such as restaurants and grocery stores. Under the bylaw, retail business establishments are required to use an ask first, buy request approach prior to distributing SUTI. So this means either asking a customer if they need, say, utensils, or the customer has to request utensils before being distributed. Alternatively, SUTI can be made available to customers at self-service kiosks. Retail business establishments are also required to accept reusable shopping bags and beverage cups provided by customers and to post signage that they accept reusable beverage cups. As of January 1st, 2025, restricted events are also required to take an ask first, buy request approach. So restricted events are defined as single-day or multi-day events restricted through the requirement of a ticket. Currently, the single-use takeaway items bylaw does not apply to events occurring on city property. However, work is underway through an internal working group to address SUTI generated at city facilities. So what's next? In December 2023, Council directed staff to report back on the feasibility of expanding the SUTI bylaw and strategy in the following areas. For retail business establishments, we'll be investigating the potential to accept customers' reusable food containers and a requirement that reusable food containers and beverage cups are used for dine-in service. For restricted events, we'll be investigating the potential to accept customers' reusable bags, cups, and food containers, and a requirement that reusable food containers and beverage cups are used for dine-in service. And then finally, for large event venues, so large event venues are currently not defined in the bylaw, so we'll be investigating the feasibility of expanding all components of the bylaw to these venues. So to move forward with this work, on the slide is a high-level outline of our work plan. First, a scan will be conducted of other jurisdictions' SUDI reduction activities, policies, and bylaws. Examples include the City of Edmonton's bylaw that requires reusable cups for dine-in operations at restaurants, and the City of San Francisco's ordinance that requires reusable beverage containers at events. Next, we'll conduct consultations with several different groups, and then based on the consultations and the scan, we'll develop recommendations to Council on how to expand the reduction strategy and or bylaw, and that will be happening in the coming months. Next steps, so for more information on the SUDI reduction strategy and the SUDI bylaw, please visit our webpage, which is on the city site. Our webpage also includes a link that allows you to sign up for our mailing list. And then as mentioned, we are planning consultations in the coming months. We're working on finalizing the details, but once finalized, we do welcome everyone to participate. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks, Myron. So we're now going to have two presentations from Michael Kant. Michael Kant is a principal at GHD, part of the project team supporting the update to the long-term waste management strategy. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks, Robin. Welcome, everyone, in person and online. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. As Robin mentioned, I'll be doing two separate presentations, the first being on the long-term waste management strategy and the second on the residual waste. The long-term waste strategy was approved by City Council in 2016 and guides the development and implementation of environmentally sustainable, socially acceptable, and cost-effective waste management policies and programs. And as Charlotte mentioned earlier, the waste strategy adopts the waste hierarchy, prioritizing the reduction of waste generation where possible. This is followed by reuse, which encourages multiple use over single-use items. Recycling, where waste is converted into new products. Recovery, and as a last option for managing waste, residual disposal. The hierarchy has been around for a very long time, probably as long as I've been in the industry. And it's something that we've been following for quite some time and made some significant progress on. The waste strategy, as you can see on this slide, is being prepared in 3 phases, involving public consultation in each phase to seek input from the public and interest groups like yourselves. The city has completed phase 1, which focused on understanding the current state of the city's waste management system and progress since the 2016 strategy mentioned earlier. Reviewing best practices and refining the vision and targets to work towards an aspirational goal of zero waste. The city is currently in phase 2, identifying options for managing the city's waste. In this phase, the city is seeking your input on which options the city should consider, their criteria for evaluating these options, and perceptions of energy from waste, or more commonly referred to as incineration. And the last phase, phase 3, will be the creation of an updated 10-year waste strategy, providing the roadmap to achieving the city's updated waste management goals. The city is seeking feedback from you on the proposed strategy and recommendations, and anticipates presenting the final strategy to council in 2026. So this is the timeline. This is your time to participate in the process. An important part of the waste strategy update is understanding the city's waste management history, where the city is now and where the city has been successful and has faced challenges. Through this, we can identify our next steps. This process involved the development of basically 3 technical memorandum. The current state being 1, system review, and system needs. The first step was to understand the current state of the waste management system as it exists. This task involves summarizing the city's waste programs, policies, and services. We reviewed data and metrics to understand how much and the type of waste we have collected, diverted, and disposed over time, and set baselines to evaluate performance over time. The second step was the overall waste system review. To do this, the city reviewed and analyzed and evaluated the programs of the 2016 recommendations. They identified key learnings and key performance indicators to measure progress, identified challenges and opportunities that influenced implementation, and reviewed the current and future policy landscape that may impact the update. Once the current state and the review of the city system was completed, the system's needs were identified. This included establishing a clear vision to achieve long-term goals, reviewing best practices and emerging areas of policy and programs on a local, national, and international scale, and waste diversion and reduction goals and targets. These 3 technical memoranda lead to where the city is now, with a long list of options and evaluation criteria for public review and feedback. The options, evaluation criteria, and feedback from the Phase 2 consultation will come together in the next technical memorandum. So, the city has made progress on the 2016 waste strategy recommendations. The strategy recommended over 30 actions that prioritize reduction, reuse, and increase participation in existing waste diversion programs. The city took a collaborative approach to ensure access to convenient and user-friendly programs. To guide implementation, the 2016 waste strategy was organized into 6 categories: reduction, reuse, recycling, recovery, residual waste disposal, overall system recommendations, and operational considerations and implementation tools. Several initiatives have been implemented or are currently in the planning stages. These include establishment of a dedicated circular economy unit, which we heard from earlier, a bylaw to reduce single-use and takeaway items, another item that has been discussed earlier, and reviewing long-term residual waste disposal options. In addition, some options were studied but not pursued. These included the development of what we refer to as a mixed waste processing facility with organics recovery, implementing reverse vending machines, and establishing mobile drop-off depots. A number of key factors have influenced what was implemented and what was not. These include system and operational changes, provincial and federal waste legislation and policies such as extended producer responsibility, and single-use plastic reduction regulations, and commitments under the Transform TO Climate Action Strategy. So, what did the city hear in the Phase 1 consultation? A wide range of perspectives from the community. They received over 4,000 responses through online surveys and public opinion research, connected with 80 participants through drop-in events and virtual meetings, and engaged with over 40 participants representing 35 organizations in interest group workshops. So quite a bit of consultation. From these engagement efforts, several key themes emerged. There's a strong support for introducing new waste programs and services, along with a desire to boost participation in existing ones. Many participants emphasize the importance of community health, environmental protection, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions to help mitigate climate change. They also heard clear call for strong enforcement and accountability through inspections, bans, and producer responsibility. And finally, there was a strong interest in improving communications and education, particularly through more direct interactions and partnerships. So program options. This slide outlines the program options the city is exploring as part of the waste strategy update. These options were developed by considering the results from the first 3 technical memoranda and the feedback during the Phase 1 consultation. The options are grouped into several focus areas: waste reduction and reuse, encouraging less waste generation, and promoting reuse wherever possible; waste management services, improving how we collect, process, and manage waste across the city; implementation tools and considerations. These would include strategies like promotion, education, and outreach, advocacy efforts, carbon reduction initiatives, and innovation to support and scale new ideas. Multi-residential and non-residential sector, addressing the unique needs of these 2 sectors. Residual waste, exploring how we manage what remains after reduction, reuse, and diversion efforts. Now, over the next few slides, we review the options being proposed in these focus areas. Except for residual waste, that's the second presentation, which I'll cover later. Residual waste. Oh, sorry. Residual waste. You're welcome. Waste reduction and reuse is the first category in which various program options are being considered. Activities focused on reducing and reusing waste can help us conserve resources and prevent waste from being created in the first place. We also know that up to 60% of what is in the garbage can be diverted to the blue bin or the green bin. So improving recycling and composting is another key way to reduce what ends up in landfill. The city is considering various options under this category, as outlined in this slide, that include reviewing opportunities for collaboration and funding models to support programs that encourage share, repair, and reuse culture, exploring curbside bin inspections to improve sorting and diversion are 2. Under waste management services, to help increase convenience, access, and participation, the city is looking at ways to improve core services like drop-off depots and community environment days, so they are easier to use and more responsive to community needs. The options the city is looking at include enhancing access to drop-off depots, review the types of items accepted at these depots, enhancing the access and convenience of community environmental days. In the multi-residential and non-residential sectors, we know that waste from these sectors represents one of the biggest opportunities to increase diversion. To make an impact, we need to continue successful programs and also explore new approaches. The city is considering various options under this category, including providing diversion support and resources for local businesses in multi-residential buildings, exploring ways to reduce and recover organic waste from non-residential customers, exploring alternative collection methods and technologies for multi-residential buildings to increase the collection of green bin organics and other divertible materials. Under implementation tools and considerations, starting with promotion, education, and outreach. This part of the strategy is all about supporting behavior change, making it easier for both residents and businesses to reduce and divert more of their waste. The city can consider strengthening our partnerships with community organizations and schools, which helps us extend our reach and connect with more people in meaningful ways. The city is also considering various options under this category, including engaging with faith-based, newcomer, and Indigenous organizations to ensure information and co-develop education efforts. Enhancing tailored strategies to increase engagement in waste reduction and diversion, making sure our communications actually reach and resonate with the public. Engaging multi-residential and non-residential customers through waste management workshops. The next area under implementing tools and considerations is advocacy. This is about using our voice to influence change beyond the local level. By working with other levels of government, we can help shape policies that support our goals and can encourage participation in building a more sustainable and inclusive future. Some of the options the city is considering are advocating for policy and legislative change, such as advancing the food and organic waste policy statement in the province of Ontario, and advocating for extended producer responsibility for new materials such as mattresses, textiles, and compostable products. The next area under implementation tools and considerations is carbon reduction. Waste might not be the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about greenhouse gas emissions, but it actually contributes to almost 10% of Toronto's total emissions. So if we were aiming for net zero by 2040, reducing and diverting more waste from landfill has to be part of that solution. The options we are considering include establishing key performance indicators to measure greenhouse gas emissions from waste reduction and diversion, and assessing the carbon impact of the city's waste management activities to identify opportunities for reducing emissions. Innovation. Toronto has long been a leader in waste diversion, and to stay at the forefront, needs to explore new technologies and create approaches that can help the city do even better. Some of the things they're considering: monitoring the latest technologies, emerging research and best practices. This includes such things as AI, robotics, and smart technologies, and monitoring the prevalence of compostable products and new and emerging packaging in our waste streams. Evaluation methodology for all of these options. The slide outlines how we are proposing to evaluate the different options using a triple bottom line approach that looks at environment, social, and financial impacts. This framework was used in the 2016 strategy, and the city is seeking input on it if it needs to be modified. Environmental benefit or impact. Does it support the development of a circular economy? Does it prioritize actions like rethink, reduce, reuse, recycle? Does it reduce greenhouse gas emissions? Under social, how convenient is it for users? Does it require complex approval processes? Does it have impacts on public health? And finally, on the financial benefit, is it cost effective and does it contribute to economic growth? And is it flexible in terms of implementation and timeline? So that's an outline of the long-term strategy, the options, and the evaluation process that's proposed. So I know I said a lot, but take a look at that, and I'll get on to the second one.
Just going to give Michael a second to catch his breath. There was a lot of information presented just now, and I know a lot of you are here tonight and really interested in the second presentation that we're going to get to in just a moment on the residual waste management work plan. Just a reminder, I know that the image of the speaker is interrupting a few of the slides, so the full slide deck is available on the city website, toronto.ca/waste strategy, and if you are tuning in online, you can look at that as well. And I'm seeing one question from the audience. We're going to hold for Q&A, but is it a technical question just about the event? Yeah. We're going to repost that and we'll leave it up for the full Q&A. Okay, so after his presentation, it'll be on screen. It's also, if you go to toronto.ca/waste strategy, there is a link there now if you want to type in any questions. Okay, so I'm going to pass it back to Michael for our final presentation.
Thank you. As many of you know, Toronto sends the majority of its waste to the Green Lane landfill, which is located just outside of London, Ontario. The Green Lane landfill is anticipated to reach capacity around 2035, and currently Toronto does not have a long-term option to manage its garbage beyond then. The issue of landfill capacity is not unique to the City of Toronto. The entire province of Ontario is running out of capacity on a similar time frame. Through the long-term waste management strategy, the City of Toronto is committed to continuing enhancing its reduction and diversion policies and programs. However, if the city were to meet the province of Ontario's ambitious 80% diversion target by 2050, the city would still need to manage about 60 kilograms of garbage per person per year. And that's the equivalent of 25,000 garbage trucks annually. So the city needs a long-term solution to manage that garbage. So Toronto's options. The City of Toronto has been studying long-term options to manage garbage for several years. And in 2023, City Council approved the Residual Waste Management Work Plan, which laid out 4 long-term options to investigate for feasibility. The first option, partner with another municipality to purchase an existing public landfill, host a new landfill, or expand an existing public landfill. Negotiate with the private landfill owners for the purchase of an existing private landfill. Number 3, expand the city's own Green Lane landfill. And 4th, explore energy from waste technologies or incineration. City Council also required the solid waste management services conduct community consultations prior to negotiating with any energy from waste or incineration facilities or vendors, which is why we are here today. Now, we got to stress, no decisions have been made on any of these options at this stage. The city is gathering information on both the feasibility of these options and support for moving them forward. Here we see an overview and timeline of the process that has been made, where we are now, and the road ahead. As mentioned earlier, in 2016, Council approved the long-term waste management strategy. In 2023, Council approved the Residual Waste Management Work Plan, which we mentioned previously. Obviously, previously mentioned was a requirement for community consultation on energy from waste or incineration, which started in November 2024 when the City of Toronto kicked off the consultation on the long-term waste strategy and provided background information to residents to educate them about the province's current situation as it relates to landfill capacity and provide some high-level information about what landfilling is and what energy from waste or incineration is. This now leads into where we are now, Phase 2 consultations, where the city is engaging with Toronto residents, yourselves, and interested parties to gather your feedback on energy from waste or incineration as an option to manage the City of Toronto's garbage in the long term. The feedback will be included in a report that will include updates about the other options, the other 3 options, in the Residual Waste Management Plan and will be presented to Council. The City of Toronto is targeting to present to Council in the fall of 2025. The Council may then decide on next steps, which could include moving forward with one or more of these options, including potentially entering into a provincially regulated environmental assessment process, conducting further studies, and consultations. We are now in Phase 2 of the consultation, where we'll be trying to gain an understanding of the perceptions of energy from waste or incineration technology compared to landfilling, and the values that influence these perceptions. Just a reminder that we are only exploring options at this stage and that no decision has been made. Feedback from this consultation will be presented to City Council along with updates on the other options we are exploring. In addition to this event tonight, we will also be engaging with various interested parties such as residential groups, urban indigenous organizations, non-governmental organizations, environmental organizations, public health groups, and the waste sector industry itself. Over the next several slides, we're going to give a bit of a recap on the content we provided in the Phase 1 consultation and also do a bit of a deeper dive into energy from waste or incineration and landfilling, including their benefits and challenges at a high level. On this slide, we can see some of the significant pressures faced by Toronto and other jurisdictions in the province that are impacting landfills. First off, it should be noted that it would be very difficult to build a new landfill within Toronto's boundaries. The sheer land size required to build a landfill with this in city would be difficult, if not impossible. It would also require adherence to a number of provincial and municipal policies and regulations, which would be difficult to adhere to given the population density in the city and protection requirements from sensitive receptors. This means Toronto would be reliant on finding land in other jurisdictions to build a landfill. Ontario legislation makes this task extremely challenging, since new landfills now require not only the host municipal council to approve a new landfill, but possibly the adjacent municipalities as well. This is why there has been no new landfill built in Ontario in over 20 years. And without additional capacity, the province itself, the landfills are expected to be full in about 10 years also. Lastly, with the recent trade policies in the United States becoming more restrictive, there is now a heightened risk that the more than 3 million tons of mostly commercial waste that is exported to the United States from Ontario every year, that's about 30% of all the garbage Ontario generates, could require disposal in Ontario. Should that risk become a reality, the landfill capacity in Ontario would be depleted much sooner. While the City of Toronto does not currently send any of the garbage that they manage to the United States, the unpredictability at the border could create issues for the city long term. This slide gives a brief overview how energy from waste incineration works. Now, similar to landfilling, energy from waste or incineration begins with garbage that remains after efforts to reduce and divert waste. The garbage is transported to the energy from waste incineration facility where it is burned at high temperatures to produce energy, such as electricity or heat. Energy from waste or incineration facilities in Ontario are subject to very strict environmental regulations. However, they do produce air emissions including carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas, nitrogen dioxide and sulfur dioxide, which have health and environmental impacts. After incineration, what's left includes metals, which can be recovered and recycled from the facility, and ash, which still requires disposal and is sent to a landfill. This slide presents the air quality guidelines for Ontario, the United States, and European Union. Based on this data, the European Union's guidelines are stricter than Ontario and the US guidelines for most pollutants. Ontario guidelines are similar for most pollutants to the US, but Ontario is often stricter. In terms of dioxin interference, the US does not have guidelines publicly available. That gives you an indication of the air quality standards that these facilities have to meet. Now, the benefits and challenges from energy from waste. This slide provides a brief high-level overview of these benefits and challenges. As for potential benefits, energy from waste or incineration recovers energy from the garbage, generally emits less greenhouse gases compared to landfilling, requires less physical land than a landfill site or a smaller footprint, and can be managed within an urban environment because of the smaller footprint size. As for challenges, energy from waste or incineration, it's more costly than landfilling, emits other air pollutants that I mentioned earlier that are harmful to human and environmental health, and still requires ash, a byproduct of incineration, to be disposed in the landfill. Now, landfills or landfilling. This slide gives sort of a high-level look at what happens to waste that ends up in a landfill. After reducing and diverting as much waste as possible, the remaining garbage collected and transported to a landfill, like the Green Lane landfill, where it is compacted and buried. Landfills in Ontario operate under strict environmental regulations to help minimize their impact. These controls address things like protecting local water systems, managing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing debris, and controlling odors. One of the biggest environmental challenges with landfills is the methane gas released as waste breaks down. Methane is a powerful greenhouse gas, but it can be captured and either flared to reduce its environmental impact or turned into renewable natural gas, or RNG, which can then be fed into the natural gas grid and used as a cleaner energy source. It is also important to note that maintaining these controls doesn't stop when a landfill closes. It's a responsibility that continues long after the site is not active, in many cases, decades. Landfill standards. Ontario's landfill design standards align with regulations across Canada and the US, prioritizing environmental protection. Key measures include controlling the landfill gas, treating leachate to prevent contamination, using engineered liners to safeguard soil and groundwater, and managing air quality and odor. So the benefits and challenges of landfilling. Some of the benefits include it's a lower cost to build and operate when compared to energy from waste or incineration. They can also generate energy through the capture of methane gas, then converting the gas to usable fuel. Landfills have been the main method of disposal in North America for a very long time, which brings with it a solid understanding and experience of how to best design and operate them. Some of the challenges with landfills are they generally have higher greenhouse gas emissions when compared to energy from waste. Methane emissions, water runoff, and odor must be rigorously managed and controlled to mitigate negative impacts to the local environment. They must be managed for generations after they reach capacity and closed, and they require a much larger physical land area compared to energy from waste incineration. This slide just provides a high-level comparison of some of the main benefits and challenges of energy from waste or incineration and landfilling. Due to Toronto's waste composition, there are really only two types of energy from waste or incineration technologies that can feasibly manage Toronto's garbage. One is called mass burn, and the other is gasification. Mass burn is a direct incineration process where municipal solid waste is combusted to generate heat and electricity, whereas gasification is a thermochemical process that converts waste into a synthetic gas, referred to as syngas, and a solid byproduct, with the syngas used for energy production and the solid residue often subjected to further combustion. There are other technologies to treat waste, but they generally require a homogeneous feedstock, such as only plastics or only agricultural waste. In this table, we can see how energy from waste incineration technologies have a higher energy production potential compared to landfilling, but still produce an ash or biochar solid byproduct that requires management. Energy from waste incineration facilities generally produce less greenhouse gases when compared to landfilling, but also produce more air pollutants such as particulate matter, dioxins and furans, and nitrogen oxide. When it comes to cost, landfills are generally less costly to build and maintain, but do require much more physical land space when compared to landfills. And that's the end of that one. Yep.
Okay, thanks, Michael, for taking us through those two presentations. I'm going to now ask Charlotte, Erwin, and Atif to make their way to the podium as well for the Q&A. I'm just going to explain a few logistics of how this Q&A is going to work. Okay, so if you're able to get to one of the two fixed microphones, we have one at this aisle here with Mary Helen. She'll be helping people queue to ask questions verbally. And we have another fixed microphone to my left where Emily, if you want to just raise your hand quickly, will be helping people queue to ask questions. Jane in the middle here, if anyone is unable to get to one of the fixed mics, just raise your hand and flag down Jane and she'll come over to you with a microphone. Okay, so we're also going to be taking questions online and kind of going between the questions that are coming in online and the questions that are live here in the room. We are going to try and get to as many of you as possible. We have till 7:30, so that's a good 40 minutes for questions. We should be able to hear from lots of folks. And I know some people have been wondering where the slides are online. They are on the Waste Strategy webpage. You do have to scroll down. They're under the public consultation tab, so apologies that they are a little bit hidden. And I just want to welcome Erwin and Atif to the podium. Erwin is the manager of solid waste policy and planning, and Atif is a project director in residual waste, and they'll be supporting the Q&A as well. Megan and Myron are here as well if you do have questions for them. So with that said, it looks like people are lined up already. Let's go to Mary Helen's microphone. Just turn it on. There's a little button on the top, and Emily, you can do the same. Your microphone can be turned on.
Good evening. My name's Tom Markowitz. I'm a retired engineer in Toronto. I'd like to know whether you've considered the interaction between Toronto and other communities with these programs to reduce single-use plastics and other items. How are people going to conform to this program when in Toronto, when they could perhaps go to Mississauga and buy single-use plastics and use them there? And this, it's not just Toronto and neighboring municipalities, it's Ontario and Canada and even North America that we really need standards across the continent, otherwise it might not work.
Thank you. Myron, are you able to speak a bit to that and some of the challenges that go on crossing borders with single-use items?
Sure. It's a good question. I think throughout our process, as I mentioned, it's been a 7-year process, but throughout that process, we have been doing jurisdictional scans and making sure that we're well aware of what's happening in surrounding communities and across Canada. A lot of our programming has been informed by what's happening in Vancouver or other cities across Canada and internationally. I think as well, it's important to note that the federal plastic ban came into place during our work, and our bylaw supports that. And I know a lot of other municipalities as well, their bans support it, or they kind of go further than what the federal government does. So there is an awareness on what's happening at other jurisdictional levels, and we are aware and try to apply what we can from our learnings. So thanks.
Thanks, Myron. I think Erwin wanted to add a few points as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question. Just to add a little bit to Myron's answer there, we're in very close discussions with the neighboring municipalities. We're close partners with them. We discuss a lot of our activities with them, including our long-term waste management strategy. So they're well aware of our SUDI strategy. They've given us their feedback, and we remain in close contact with them just to make sure that we understand and they understand the impacts of all of our activities. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to go over to Emily's microphone. Go ahead. Yeah.
Hi.
Is that?
Hear me?
No. Just make sure it's on, and you might need to come really close. Yeah, it is on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, volume. I have asthma and COPD. My name is William Sheehan. I have no conflicts. I'm a beleaguered taxpayer from Scarborough, out near the Root Hill GO station. Last time I looked into it, which was several years ago, for many years beyond that too, the recycling program was never making a profit. The last I looked into it, revenue was $20 million. It cost $60 million, so taxpayers were losing $40 million every year on it. That's an expensive frill. Is the annual loss still $40 million to taxpayers? It is?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just nodding to take your question. So I'm going to pass that to Charlotte, who can speak to the revenue streams for the solid waste division.
Timely question. You'll be happy to hear
Charlotte,
that.
a bit closer.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, so timely question for sure. So you'll be happy to know that under provincial regulation, the financial and operational responsibility of managing recyclables, so packaging and packaging-like products, has been transitioned to the producers of those products, meaning that the city is no longer responsible for the management of that program. It's actually been put on the individuals that are best positioned to, those that design, distribute, retailers of those products. It's been passed on to them as in like the best individuals to actually make, recover the materials, to, collect them effectively, efficiently, and to process them into new recyclables. So in terms of revenues, the City of Toronto, we actually aren't part of that system anymore. We aren't responsible for collecting it. We don't have to worry about selling it. Again, it's been put onto the producers, and that's on account of a provincial regulation. So happy to know that that cost is not borne by the city no longer.
Is it still a $40 million loss, though?
We wouldn't have that information, again, because like we are no longer responsible for it financially or operationally. It's actually been put on those, people, the maker, distributors, retailers of those products. So they're the ones that are going to be actually responsible for establishing collection programs, doing promotion education, to collect those materials from Ontario consumers, and then to either process them, make them into new materials, or to sell them for revenue. So it's not a line. We don't have a line of sight to that anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go over here back to Mary Helen's microphone. And make sure you just hold it really close like you're eating ice cream.
Okay. My name is Bennett McCardle, and from long experience working on municipal policy issues for the provincial government, I'm now retired. I'm concerned about the absence of general public understanding of the energy from waste option, which I'm sure will be translated into the incineration option, because that basically is what it is. And I wonder what plans you have for educating the public objectively and thoroughly about that option. I see that questions about that option are already included in the survey, which I filled out recently. And most people who fill it out will have no idea whatever of what that option is. And what I fear is that, as happened 20 or 30 years ago, when I was beginning with the Ontario government, it was a very controversial issue. It was presented in terms of, we are urgently require a new landfill, or we urgently have to go to that option. There was very negative response, and it was dropped very quickly. So I think if you want to have a informed public reaction this time around, you don't want to repeat that. What are you going to do to get the public understanding, and if possible, on side with one or other of the options, including that?
Thanks very much for that question. Let's go to Atif to speak a little bit to the public education strategies and transparency. And just to cue, I'm going to go to one of the online questions next.
Thank you for the question. It's an excellent question, and I think we share the same concern. In phase one, we actually started with education, so we didn't actually ask any of what you're seeing now is phase two, where we are actually asking the public questions about energy from waste. Oh, sorry, can you guys hear me? I'll just repeat what I said. So in phase one, what we were trying to do is educate Torontonians and stakeholders as well about what energy from waste is, what landfill is, and what the landfill crisis is. We're repeating some of that information in phase two as well, because we know a lot of people didn't attend our phase one. But now we're asking more detailed questions about perceptions, and we are taking baby steps, because we are trying to be careful here as well before making a decision. And I think you heard that in Michael's presentation as well, that no decision has been made yet. You'll also notice in the survey, one of the questions we do ask is, what is your understanding of energy from waste? Because we are trying to just gauge, do Torontonians know what energy from waste or incineration is? And what's their level of understanding? And based on that question, we may alter our strategy in terms of educating the public, providing more education so that people really do understand what these technologies are.
Thank you. We're going to take one of the online questions now. Emily Cameron's going to read it. Go ahead, Emily.
Thanks, Robin. So we have a question here about the next steps. So someone's just looking to clarify and find out what is coming back and when.
Okay, so that might be a question in terms of the phasing or the technical memorandums. Is anyone able to speak to process?
And maybe I'll start off by, I think there's two different files here. File I'm working on is residual waste, so I'll talk about that, and then I'll pass on to Erwin to talk a little bit about the long-term waste management strategy update. So in terms of timing for us, that we're in phase 2 right now. We've got the survey open. Please, if you haven't filled out the survey, go and fill it out. We're holding a number of workshops as well. And then in the fall, we're hoping to go back to council with a residual waste, like basically our findings of the different options. Provide that information to council for a potential decision. And then implementation would follow, depending on what we hear back.
Yeah, thanks, Atif, and thanks for the question. With regards to the long-term waste management strategy update, once we complete this phase 2 consultation, we'll go back with our consultant, look at that long list of options that was presented earlier, look at the feedback that we're receiving through this phase 2 consultations, run it through that evaluation framework that was also presented, and then come up with a refined list of options to bring forward. We'll then proceed into phase 3 consultations, which will take place roughly October, November of this year, present those refined options for feedback, and then following that, we'll finalize the strategy update and present it to council for their approval sometime next year.
Thanks. I'm going to take one more online question, and then we'll go back to the live microphones.
Okay, our next question here is about waste diversion enforcement. So is the city going to introduce fines for businesses, building complexes, and individuals if they don't properly dispose and differentiate their garbage?
Thanks. Who wants to take a stab at that? Erwin?
I'll take a stab at
Great.
it. Again, thanks for the question. It's a great question. Our participation in our waste diversion programs always driven by two things. There's the education side and the enforcement side. What we heard through phase 1 consultations was we should work on looking at both the education, enhancing the education efforts, and also there was appetite, some desire for increased enforcement, some accountability for people, for households, for buildings, businesses to take greater care in their sorting, to sort better, to participate in our programs. So definitely increased enforcement or some form of enhanced enforcement is something that we are considering in this phase of the strategy. Thanks.
Okay, let's go back to our live microphone. Let's go over here.
Is that a good volume?
It's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think just going back to the third last question about educating people on waste to incineration. I might be someone who falls into the category of knowing a bit more about things like waste to incineration. It's kind of education's part of my job. And I just want to really strongly oppose this as an option. I was kind of disappointed to see that the only two options presented today were more landfilling and waste to energy, which, as you said, is more expensive than our current options. And I also noticed earlier the slides that were playing before we started the presentation, you guys cited that almost 42 to 46% of garbage is just organic waste, probably food and, things that can be composted. So I just wonder why, our city has some really great composting initiatives. I just wonder why when we could literally reduce, 46 to 60% of our garbage through better composting and better recycling, why we're talking about burning garbage, which is worse for the environment. There are lots of studies that show, including this one that I just printed off of the Environmental Defense website. For anyone who doesn't know about incineration, you should really check it out because it actually produces more greenhouse gases. So it is quite concerning. So I just feel kind of disappointed that composting isn't taking a predominant role here.
Yeah. Thanks for the comment. Would anyone on the panel like to speak to kind of that disconnect and why there were only two options presented?
Maybe I'll start and then I'll pass it on to others to speak to. So I did want to clarify, like, we're having the conversation today, and we've deliberately married the conversations of the update of long-term waste management strategy and residual waste, because our priority really is that on the hierarchy: reduce, reuse, recycle. Like, that's really what we want to do. We don't want residual waste. I don't think anybody in solid waste wants to manage residual waste. We do have a crisis, right, in terms of what are we going to do with our residual waste, and not just Toronto, but this is across the province. There's 10 years of capacity left across the province, landfill capacity. We can, and with the efforts of everybody in this room and Torontonians more broadly, we can maybe push that, right? That's based on our current modeling. Maybe we can push that a bit. But we also have to deal with residual waste at the end. And I know Michael talked about even if we reach an 80% diversion, we still are going to have thousands of trucks of garbage that we're going to have to manage. So the two options that you're looking at, and the panels up, those are really for residual waste. But there's countless options available for reduction and reuse, including composting. And I think everybody on this panel would agree, composting is very important. Participation in all the diversion programs are very important. And any ideas you guys have to increase that participation, or innovative ideas in terms of how we can reduce and reuse, we want to hear those, and that's what Irwin's team is really doing.
I think Italy is a really great country that has set an example for how composting does, like, they've produced their efficiency to like 80% just by banning regular plastic and accepting compostable plastics in certain programs. So it's stuff like that, like, that's gonna minimize what is considered, I don't know what you were just calling it, like waste, residual waste. Thank you. Yeah, like, I mean, what is residual waste, right? Like, is it toxic ash from incineration? Is it, stuff that could have been composted? I think more education, as that previous commenter said, would be awesome.
Okay. Thank you for the comment. Okay, I'm going to go to this microphone and then to an online question. Go ahead.
I'll be fast.
Great.
As a ratepayer, I just want to say that I do support the gasification effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Emily, let's hear one from our online queue. Yeah.
Okay, so the next question: when is the city going to mandate and fund enforcement for single-use and takeaway items? And specifically, there's a question asking about mandating reusables on city property.
Thank you. So first question on single-use items for Myron, and then about mandating reusables.
Sure. So in terms of enforcement, after the bylaw came into effect, we took a complaints-based approach. So if someone observed a business that was not in compliance with the bylaw, we asked that they call into 311 and log the complaint. We took an education-based approach. So our goal is to, when we're informed of non-compliance, is to educate the business and help them to achieve compliance. So that's the focus we've been taking, and we still take. That being said, we do have the ability to levy fines if we need to, but that would maybe be through multiple infractions. Our core, or our kind of focus, is on education. So that's there is the ability to fine, but we are focused on educating retail business establishments.
Okay, and I think the second part of the question was on mandating reusables.
Yeah, I can take a stab, and if someone else wants to jump in, that's fine. And I think it was focused on city property. Is that correct? Okay. So the work that we're doing later this year is focused on reusables and retail business establishments, restricted events, and large event venues. But part of that work, we are looking, and I mentioned there's a working group that's been developed to reduce SUDI at city facilities. But part of that work that we're doing and the consultations that we're doing, we are including city property events. So we will be looking at reusables at city events through kind of the work that we're doing with the other event organizers. But then as well, there's this working group that is looking at, through our day-to-day operations at the city, how can we reduce SUDI, and part of that is implementing reusable.
Okay, thanks, Myron. I'm going to go back to this microphone. Go ahead.
Hi there. My name is Rachel Chester, and I'm actually speaking to that same issue that was just raised, but I'd like to expand it to the broader spectrum of owner-operated businesses and franchises. Since COVID-19, I've seen exponentially more waste, and I've also noticed in cafes that once had reusable mugs served at the tables, they completely abolished it and now just serve toss-away mugs or cups. And I'm just wondering what the policy is with moving forward and maybe reinforcing that cafes use reusable mugs for sit-down customers, and also that perhaps signage and more modeling could be done in the public eye, and even just a signage from the City of Toronto that is mandatory for cafes to have, that encourage people to bring their own mugs, bring their own takeout snack bags, and their own napkins. I personally have been doing this for decades, and I've grown up in Toronto. I have a business of 30 years, and I've watched takeout and fast food restaurants increase exponentially, and with that, the waste. And there seems to be there was a survey that went around pre-COVID that was looking at paying for straws, and it was wonderful. COVID hit and it dropped. But I just want to get back to public signage to encourage people, whether it's on City of Toronto information, billboards, that even modeling, I've seen ones for, ads for George Brown, and they show a takeout toss-away mug, or cup, I should say. And all of this to say that I've even been into cafes where they say no one's asked to have sit-down, for here mugs. It's a huge waste. People have no concept and seem to have dropped the whole idea of bringing their own. It's a very easy thing to do, and I think just having public City of Toronto paid for signage, perhaps even offering a subsidy for a discount as incentive offered to the businesses, but make it across the board, and also to make it mandatory for people sitting in a cafe to have reusable, washable items. And I just really feel like this is not encouraged visually, and people have just decided that takeaway cups, which is a huge packaging dispersal and waste issue, and it's just increased.
Okay. Thank you. So 3 key points that I think you highlighted there, and we appreciate that owner-operator perspective. So one was a question about what is the actual policy for mandating reusables. Another question and comment really about the need for more public education in terms of bringing your own reusables. And then I don't know if anyone's able to speak a bit to COVID and what happened and that impact on the single-use and takeaway item reduction strategy.
I'll take the first 2, and maybe I'll hand off the COVID question. But so currently there isn't a requirement for retail business establishments to provide reusables. That's our next step that we're working on and exploring later this year. So that's the aim is for foodware or food containers and beverage containers as well to be reusables for dine-in operation. So again, like I mentioned, stay tuned for consultations, and that is something we're going out and talking to business owners, event owners, and the general publics as well. So that's upcoming, but currently there's nothing in place there. And then I appreciate the feedback on signage. That's a great point. I've made note of that. And if you have any other thoughts or any other feedback related to that reusables point, just feel free to participate in our upcoming consultations or just stay tuned on our webpage.
Visual reminding is really impactful, and it just needs to be modeled more, I think, because people don't currently seem to care or take self-responsibility.
Yeah, thanks for that perspective. And I think Charlotte and Megan both wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. I I won't pretend that I can speak to the full impacts of COVID, but certainly I think we've all seen consumption patterns have changed, sometimes out of necessity, and then it can be really challenging to break those habits. I did want to mention that the impact on COVID, of the COVID-19 pandemic on food businesses in particular, has been quite significant. That sector is one that is long to recover and is facing a lot of other pressures. And that was one of the rationales that we had when we actually brought forward the single-use and takeaway items bylaw. We also piloted a program to fund reuse pilots in the city through the Circular Food Innovators Fund. We're in the process of wrapping up those projects now, and I will say we're really happy with the success that those businesses have had. So the messages we're hearing loud and clear today about the need to tell those stories and showcase that success, definitely something we want to take back. And certainly if these kinds of incentive programs are things that the public would like to see more of, would be really happy to hear your feedback on that through this project, and would also welcome your perspectives on how we can communicate more effectively. What are the messages people want to hear? What are the channels they want to hear them in? That feedback's really helpful for us. But yes, it is a really significant challenge for the sector, so thank you for bringing it up here.
And sorry, you were saying how to be more in tuned and in touch, because I have a business retail store, and that's another issue that I won't present right now for reusable and circular, but I do a lot of that within my business, and I'm just looking for more avenues to connect to and also to see solutions, which I have a lot of.
Great. Well, there'll be some time to connect with each other after the Q&A. So it's 7:15 now. I do want to get to as many people as possible before 7:30. I'm going to go back to this microphone over here. Thanks for the questions and comments.
Hello.
And Emily, if I can just get you to help people put the microphone right where it needs to be for our online viewers as well, so they can hear.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, so to my knowledge at least, that incineration is a more popular option in Europe.
Yeah.
But when you were presenting our slides today, you were showing guidelines that followed more towards the US guidelines, but I just thought it might be weird considering that EU standards are a bit higher and they're the region that uses more incineration technologies. Could you expand more on that?
Sure, absolutely. That might be a question for Michael to speak to some of the standards that are used as comparisons and which ones we're using here.
Thank you. Yeah, the standards are different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. I mean, I can't really comment on why Ontario is different than Europe, but what I can say is in the development of them, they went through extensive consultation with the Ministry of the Environment and Energy. Same in the US. So that's how they're developed in that context. And they do look at the European, they look at whatever else is out there when they're developing this stuff. Why they're slightly different, I don't know the nuances of that to answer your question, can get back to you on that. But that's typically how they're developed in a jurisdiction.
Would the government of Ontario update their standards with the implementation of incineration, for example?
Sorry, I missed the last part of the question.
Would there be like an updated standard if the technology is to be implemented? Because I think that is an important aspect to consider if we are bringing in new technologies, especially like incineration, that causes not only greenhouse gas emissions, but also nitrogen dioxide is a key ozone destructor as well. And we do live quite close to the North Pole, which needs a lot of protection. And I think that it is a bit of Canada's responsibility to protect our land and the environment we live on. So that was the one part. And another question was to ask if the facilities, if there were to be made in Toronto or surrounding areas, if that will have would be coupled with carbon capturing systems as well. So I'm trying to see if there's not only if we are moving towards that, if the government is also still thinking of the other sustainable ways to mitigate the issues.
Okay, thanks for those follow-ups, and we'll try to get to both of them before going to the next. So one was just about if Ontario would ever change its standards, and then a question about carbon capture technologies, and if those could be in place, should this technology be used or are already in place at existing facilities?
For the Ontario question, I think it's really a question for the Ontario government, to be honest. We're constantly talking to the province, so we take this feedback back as well, and we can talk to them about that as well, their standards. And one of the reasons I should point out that one of the reasons that we put that slide up was exactly this, to spark a little bit of discussion. We're not the ones setting the Ontario standards. That's the province of Ontario. We know that there's some criticism of those standards. So one of the things we want to hear from people is, are the Ontario standards sufficient? If Toronto pursues this type of, and like I said, there's no decision made, but if we were to pursue this type of technology, should we be going beyond that? And that's why we're, demonstrating and trying to show that there's US standards, there's Ontario standards, and that slide did include EU standards as well, just for that question. And the same, I think your question on climate change and carbon capture, that's exactly the type of feedback we want to hear. If that's something that Torontonians want the City of Toronto to look at, if we're pursuing this type of technology, then 100% we want to hear that, and then we will explore that, and investigate that.
Thank you. So I'm going to go to one online question, and then I'm seeing two folks standing over here who have questions, and two more over here. So we're going to get to all of you before we wrap up. But if you aren't currently in the queue, I apologize. You can submit questions online. So let's go to one of our online questions, and then we'll go back to this microphone.
Okay, the next question, will the public be engaged in developing the evaluation framework to determine the final options?
Great. Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, thank you for the question. This is what we're here for today. Part of this session here today is not just to get feedback on our broad options, but it's also to get feedback on that evaluation framework that was presented earlier. So please, I encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to provide your feedback through our survey, and also through our email and any other way that you can provide that feedback. We're open to the feedback on the evaluation framework.
Thanks. Okay, let's go over here. Go ahead. And Mary Helen, if I can just ask you to help with the microphone placement. Thank you. It needs to be right at their mouth.
Hi there. My name's Jennifer. I'm here today with my son, Jack. I've been a chef in Toronto for about 30 years. So I'd like to just maybe give a little bit of a standpoint from the restaurant industry and how much it breaks my heart to see waste mixed up. And also just to touch on and really applaud the efforts with incineration. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a lot less scary than what people think it might be. I think there's a lot of opportunity to capture heat, electricity, and stop moving garbage around as much, because if we had a small incinerator, say in a fast food or a buffet or a hotel or even on a cruise, and burnt the garbage at the point of inception, rather than moving the truck around, burning the fuel for the truck, the staff money would be saved. So money could be saved and used in other ways. And then the incinerated waste could be dealt with on site. So I think that's a very simple way to look at it, to address it. From what I'm seeing, just make sure that there's just more discipline in separating out the garbage. So I could go on, but I think I'll keep it simple.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. We appreciate the comment. Okay, I'm going to go over here to Emily. Go ahead.
Is this good?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. My name's Emily. I'm from the Toronto Environmental Alliance, or T. I have a lot of things to say about waste, but I will keep it short. First, I recognize, is this loud enough? Can you? Okay.
A little closer would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm from the Toronto Environmental Alliance, or T. I have a lot of things to say, but I will keep it short. First, I recognize the city is looking for a lot of information on how to reduce and divert waste, and that's excellent. There are so many ideas, but right now I am going to talk about incineration and landfill because that is the urgent discussion before us, and I think there's a lot of comments here. I want to say that we also are concerned about how energy from waste is being presented as typically lower greenhouse gas emissions than landfill. The report that someone shared earlier, I was actually just messaging with the researcher from that report earlier today, and we've actually done the calculations for the Brampton incinerator and the Clarington incinerator and Toronto's Green Lane landfill and found that it actually would be lower to send it to landfill. I think there's been a lot of greenwashing by the energy from waste industry to say that it's better to burn garbage. Most garbage is plastic and organics. Those things don't belong there. So I would really like to request that the city provide more transparency in where those sort of assumptions are coming from, because I think when you actually drill down to specific facilities in Ontario that are already burning garbage, it's not actually the case. And then just a comment on the A7 guidelines, the Ontario guidelines around air quality. A number of environmental and community and health groups, including T, have actually asked the province to review those guidelines because they are so poor and they really do put human health at risk. And we have not received a response. So I'm not holding my breath for the province to fix that.
Okay, thanks, Emily. I didn't hear a question there, but I do want to invite the panel, if anyone wants to speak to Emily's points just around transparency for the city on energy from waste or perceived greenwashing. I think that is a comment we have heard. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to an online question.
Okay. Do energy from waste facilities contradict waste diversion goals since they require a continuous input of waste?
Great question. Who would like to respond to that one about the feedstock required for incineration?
Thanks for the question. It's something that's commonly heard about energy from waste facilities. But in the end of the day, I guess we have a waste and we have to handle it. What the city is looking at in their programs, I think, as the person mentioned it previously, is there's a lot of front end of getting material out. But in the end of the day, the question now is becoming, is it 70% that we need to dispose of? Is it 60? Is it 40? Is it 30? Is it 20? But there's always a number, and we have to have a facility that can handle that. And they're very adaptable to the composition that comes to them. So it doesn't, I don't think that feed question is that relevant specifically in the province of Ontario. We only have 2 facilities right now. So, and we have a landfill crisis. So we have to put this material somewhere. So to me, it doesn't push away from the diversion initiatives that are going on. I always say this, waste is a participation sport. Much different than anything else we do. When you walk in your house, you turn on the light, the electricity comes on, you flush the toilet, it goes away. But in waste, you make a conscious choice every day. So you're participating in the system. The success of the system is those that are participating. I think we all have to keep that in mind. But in the end of the day, if people aren't participating, we have that residual we have to deal with. So I think as part of a process like this, some of the stuff that we want to hear is, I'm a consultant, I've had the benefit, I work all over the place, in North America and other places, and see things. What we want to hear is, what ideas do you have to up that participation rate in the system? Because that's what's important. Because if we get the participation rate up, the amount that we need to go to disposal goes from that 70% to 60 to 40 to 20. That's the key.
Okay. So it's almost 7:30. I'm seeing that there are still a number of questions. I think we'll be okay to take them all. I would like to wrap by about 7:40, just so folks can connect with staff after, if they would like to do that. We'll take a question from over here.
Good evening. My name is Randall Johnson. I came here from Saskatchewan just to come to this meeting. And I would like to introduce the City of Toronto to a waste to circular manufacturing facility, which is now available. You talk about emerging technologies. We offer 100% recycling of everything, all municipal solid waste. There is 0 emissions from our processes, and there is 0 residual waste from our processes. We require no external use of any electricity or water. We produce our own. The products that come out of our facility is ultra pure water in large volume, and also carbon materials, which is graphite, graphene, carbon nanomaterials. Also, we capture all the metals that come out, including rare earth elements, and silica or silicon glass, whichever you call it. So those are the products that we come out. We have absolutely zero waste thing. We use 100% of solid waste into solid waste. And the name of the company is Carbutura. It is a new emerging technology. Actually, it's a conglomeration of existing technologies, and it can be introduced to the City of Toronto through this technology. So if anybody wants to look, carbutura.com is the technology. I've been trying to get in touch with Toronto for the last 2 years involving this. I have experience. I own my own waste collection company in Saskatchewan, and I've also been on the advisory committee for solid waste implementation or solid waste strategy in Saskatchewan in the past. So, Kate, I do have some experience in this whole business. I understand what y'all are talking about, understand the problems. I'm here to say that there is a solution to all of your problems. And the last thing I will say is we pay you for this feedstock. That's what we're looking for. So economically and environmentally, we are providing a solution to the City of Toronto. Anybody who wants to talk to me, have cards. I'll be here to the end of the week.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for coming out. Okay, I'm going to take a question now over here.
Thank you so much for all your hard work. We really appreciate it. Respectfully, I understand there's no solicitation. So without going into the company I consult for, we are a sustainable solutions provider, but we address specifically organic food waste. Ideally, what we take is the product and it's dehydrated without the use of enzymes or bacteria. And it produces organic, sterile-free biomass, which could be used for soil amendments, for farming, agricultural purposes, and even food, provided it's a single import stream food cycle. And also the water is pathogens-free water to be used for all-purpose cleaning, and even you could even drink it, although I wouldn't personally. My question to the City of Toronto would be this. Would the City of Toronto consider doing a pilot based entirely on circular economy, addressing organic food waste, so that the food that came from Mother Nature went right back into the ground? We use it for farming. Ideally, I think a great scenario would be Toronto Island. And I probably don't need to explain entirely what's going on at Toronto, but I think it would just be an incredible model and a fantastic pilot project to create perfect circular economy focused entirely on organic food waste. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question and comment. Megan, would you like to address if the city would be open to such type of pilot?
Yeah, so what I'd say is that through the work we're trying to do developing our circular economy roadmap, we want to hear from industry and hear from solutions providers out there. So absolutely, and it would be great to hear your voice and hear your client's voice through our project. I would suggest too that in the meantime, the green sector is certainly an area that the City of Toronto has been trying to build for some time. I would point the folks in the room who come from innovative circular businesses to our strategic partnerships office as a potential pathway for dialogue with the city about pilot opportunities. Our Green Market Acceleration Program was also established to try to help or to enable the city to leverage its infrastructure and its assets to try to help with proof of concept. I don't know if that applies in this context, but I would say both through the work we're trying to build up right now and through existing programs, we do want to hear from industry. So I'm happy to connect afterwards if you would like more information about those avenues.
Namaste.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to try to get through everyone in the next 8 minutes. Over here in the pink, go ahead.
Thank you. Mine is a quick question. It's regarding transportation. We know waste is a major contributor to greenhouse gas. So I was wondering, regardless if we end up getting a new landfill, incinerators, whatever, I was wondering if the city is considering, or if it will be considering implementing electric vehicles to kind of help mitigate and reduce greenhouse gas, which would be also helping the city achieving its net zero goals. So yeah, just more on the transportation.
Sure, absolutely.
portion. Thank you.
Charlotte, can you speak to electric vehicles in the city's fleet?
Can't speak to the entire City of Toronto fleet, but for solid waste management services, of course, we have collection vehicles and fleet that go around. It's something that I think we're always looking for opportunities to green our fleet, right? So looking for either through compressed natural gas or through renewable natural gas. Electric, I think, is an area that we were exploring. So again, I think it's something that's a continuous improvement for us. So I would say it's an option. Always looking for those ways to essentially move towards a low carbon future.
Thanks. Is there one more question at this microphone? Yeah. Go ahead.
Good evening. Hi. This question was touched upon earlier. As mentioned, there are much more rigorous emission standards in the EU. Arguably, the most successful countries in waste management are places in Europe, such as Switzerland and Sweden, which rely on energy from waste and do so in an environmentally conscious way. Would you consider importing some of these technologies specifically from EU countries?
The answer would be yes, because a lot of the infrastructure, whether it's organics or EFW, is coming from Europe right now. So yes, I think is the answer. That's what that would get looked at in terms of looking at those types of things.
Thank you. Okay, I think I'm seeing two final questions over here. So if you want to go ahead in the gray and then the gentleman in the blue, and we will wrap up for the evening. Go ahead.
Hi. I also have a very quick question. The options that we saw were all centralized treatment. Does the City of Toronto also have any decentralized options where the waste can be treated at the point where it is collected instead of hauled and again landfilled or incinerated? So,
Yeah. Is anyone able to speak to the point of treatment?
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. I think at this point, we're open to any suggestions. So, if you get feedback on on-site treatment, on-site waste reduction options, we'd be happy to hear them.
also had one other quick question. With respect to actually getting energy from the waste, is there a stand from City of Toronto that the energy would be required, or is it okay to dispose the waste sustainably where it is collected, using the energy from the waste in that way?
Or can you repeat the question?
Like we know that energy can be extracted from the waste. If we use the same energy to actually capture the carbon dioxide and make it zero emissionless at the point source, is there like a compulsion to get energy out of waste, or if that waste can be utilized for that kind of treatment, making it zero emission?
So I think if I'm understanding your question correctly, you're asking whether the energy that's produced from an energy from waste technology could be used to operate the facility. That's
yeah.
Yes, I think that's it's too early right now for us to say whether that's something that we would do, but I think that's definitely something that we would look into as we're investigating that option.
Because mostly people we power the street lights or things like that from the waste. Instead, if there is a circular process which kind of
exactly
generates inert materials from the waste and is disposed at the point source, that would be a better.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the gentleman in blue for our last question.
Thank you. So if I understand it correctly, we have about 10 years left of landfill capacity. Current legislation makes it difficult, maybe impossible, to get much more. And it's taken 10 years for this process to get to here, where we have effectively two options. One of it's incineration, the other is landfilling. And I've heard a couple times that no decision's been made. But if it's taken 10 years to get here, we have 10 years left. What are you guys going to do if they decide against incinerator?
Great question. That's a bit of a conundrum.
So I'll start. Like, it's a great question. We've got 10 years left, and that's why the way I'll answer is just say that's why we're having the conversation now. It does take about 5 years for give or take for any of these options to materialize in terms of approvals processes. So that's why we're having the conversation now. But we do think that we will be in a position to have a solution within that time frame.
Does that mean there's only one solution? Because we only have seeing two today.
Well, it could be multiple solutions. Could be multiple solutions. But we've got, you've seen the 4 options that we're looking at. If you haven't seen them, they're on the panel. But then those are just like I'll reiterate. Those are just the residual waste options. There's a whole slew of other options in terms of reducing and diverting waste as well. But we could be looking at multiple pathways. And we are looking at short-term as well. So Charlotte's reminding me that we're looking at short-term options as well, which we're diverting some of our waste using private landfills, and we'll continue to look at that option as well.
Okay, thanks. I see one person just snuck up there. Do you have a quick comment or question? Just come right up to the microphone.
Hello, my name is Suleiman
A
Salum.
little bit closer, sorry.
Hello, my name is Suleiman Salum. From what this whole discussion here, from my background, I have been trained by American company Dow and sponsored by U.S. Embassy, and also I have been trained by Swedish Institute on Sustainability, Circular Economy. I prepare a plan, 3-step plan that this city can use and can reach the landfill capacity 50% by 2035. And I will be ready to share with you. And I can just explain in 3 steps. Maybe you can get highlight. The first is stop waste before it starts. So it's involve prevention and community action. And the second plan is recover and reuse materials, recycling and innovation. And the third plan is the incineration that you propose. So incineration will be the last option after all those failed to be recycled, and then you can do that. So I'm ready to share with you, and what I calculate is that every dollar the city may be spent, it can generate $2 profit. So I can say summary like that. So thank you.
Thank you. And we appreciate you sending that information in. And that's a great segue to wrap up. We are out of time for tonight. We will stick around till 8. If you do want to speak to any staff, we can take down additional comments in the room or on the display panels. We have a survey online that so far has gotten some really great responses. That's online till June 29th, if you haven't filled it in already. If you do have additional feedback, you can send it in by email to wastestrategy@toronto.ca. We have a phone number there as well. And you can mail it in also. So the QR code on screen now will get you to all of that information to connect with us. And I just want to thank you all for spending your evening with us. Have a great night.